Um, Big welcome to And Housing Contains the Word Sing. It's a real honour for Disability Arts Online to be hosting this event. I'm Colin Hambrook. I'm an older white man wearing glasses and sitting against a white wall, and I am editor of Disability Arts Online. And it's many years ago, but I have experience of homelessness and know from personal experience just how easy it is to end up on the streets, and the links between disability and homelessness. I just wanted to say that if please look after yourselves and be comfortable and safe. We recognise homelessness frequently comes from trauma and oppression, so please remember to do what works well for you as we go into the event. I'm really pleased that we've got Elinid doing the live captioning for the event, and you should be able to see the closed caption button, which is on the bottom right of the screen if you want the captions. And it's great to have Faye doing some BSL interpretation for us as well. Gobscure is one of Disability Arts Online's associate artists, as well as an associate with the Museum of Homelessness. They are an internationally renowned performing artist as well as an exhibiting artist who works with sound and image, and their show Provoked to Madness by the Brutality of Wealth, which is a fantastic piece of work, has just been touring the UK. Also pleased to welcome Jess Turtle, who's co-founder of the Museum of Homelessness, which is a community-driven social justice museum created and run by people with direct experience of homelessness. The Museum of Homelessness tackles homelessness and housing inequality by amplifying the voices of its community through research, events, workshops, campaigns, and exhibitions. And the Museum of Homelessness also provides direct support, bursaries, mentoring, training, and practical support to its community members. And last but not least, Maria Thomas, really good to have you with us today as well. Maria trained at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire and has worked on a number of award-winning scripts and films. And Maria is currently working on their own writing projects. They are a facilitator with Head Held High and the Ben Kinsella Trust on a motivational program called The Best You, aimed at year 9 and 10. So I think that's all from me for the moment, and I'd really like to hand over to Gobscure.
Hi. So just to add, describe ourselves, we've got a shaved head, we wear glasses, we're large and white. We've got a black top on, but with braces which have flame patterns on them. We're in our council flat in the northeast, and there is some art on the wall and beside us. You will actually be seeing a short film later featuring that art, so I don't need to describe it just now. And behind me is some fabric given to me by Ashok, who is another associate artist of Disability Arts Online, when we were on tour, and I know that he also gave a piece to Lindsay, who's actually our brilliant access support worker, who's in the audience today. Pronouns, we use they and them. And our sign name given to us by Jenny Seeley at Grey Eye combines gob and obscure. My arthritis is bad, so it is a chatty hand followed by making an X across our body with our hands. There's a number of articles, 4 articles online, some free art, and this event under the banner housing contains the word sing, because the word housing literally does end in sing. And it could do in the future as well. The idea was to create a collective space, and the link is in the chat or the Q&A section, so you can find all those articles in your own time. The idea, as Colin mentioned earlier, was this thing of, if you like, the shared DNA of homelessness and of disability. And probably, if you've ever experienced homelessness, it's likely to make you disabled if you aren't already. But this event is about turning things around. How can arts be done better? By learning from lived experiences. The hallway to our council flat, just back there, contains a phrase by Octavia Butler. The normals don't survive. So life wounds us. We then perhaps come across services who we would like to heal, fix us. They like to wear lanyards and gatekeep, re-traumatizing us. And then we come to the arts. Many, many wonderful examples, but let's face it, the average artistic director is very much like the head of assertive or aggressive outreach or award manager. Re-traumatizing. Museum of Homelessness use a brilliant phrase, healing and justice. We call it love and rage. And we're going to switch the candle on just now. A bit more light. So what unites trauma therapists, radical economists, writers who campaign? For example, George Lakoff, L-A-K-O-F-F. He wrote a book, Don't Think of Elephants. You're now all thinking of elephants. I have framed the narrative, which means that I have won the ownership of it. Systems and power frame narratives. We can't win fighting against them. You have to take it somewhere else. If we wish to win the argument, we need to reframe the narrative. Housing, it's not difficult. It's not about money, etc. Housing is easy. It's a human right. Laurie Anderson was asked, how can we begin again? She replied, I think that the resistance will be in the language, and I think that it will be artists that do it. We're all boxed in. We need to not so much think outside of boxes, but dream outside of them. Here is a box, it's transparent, and it has dream written in large across it. We need to reframe these arguments. I want to end just now by reading a couple of paragraphs from a book by Rebecca Solnit called Hope in the Dark. This is from one of those chapters. Every Wednesday and Sunday, the plaza hosts a farmer's market. A big spread full of affordable food eagerly bought by the poor here in the supermarketless inner city. Food grown and sold by Laotians, Latinos, old-time local whites, a small, pragmatic United Nations of food production and urban-rural rendezvous. The rest of the time, it mostly belongs to the homeless. And so I go once a week to buy food from farmers and once a week to give it away to the destitute. It's hard to say what difference we make, but we meet people who are hungry, people who bless us, and people who turn away. Few remember that there was no significant US homeless population before the 1980s, that Ronald Reagan's New Society and Economy created these swollen ranks of street people. Let's find hope in dark times. Let's reframe narratives. Here is Jess, co-founder of the Museum of Homelessness, to talk a little more about healing and justice, among other things. Cheers, Jess.
Thank you so much, gobscure. And hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here today. I am a white woman. I'm in my 40s. I've got blonde hair and I'm wearing hoop earrings and a black t-shirt. It's lovely to be here with Colin, with Maria, with Faye and Eleanor and all of you today, and for gobscure to have been put together this event. I think we really need it. I think we really need to find better ways of being together. And that is what Museum of Homelessness is all about. Colin gave us a great introduction, so I won't repeat that, but we are a social justice museum, and we don't have our own building yet, but we operate, you know, wherever is necessary. And sometimes that means mainstream art galleries like Tate, and sometimes that's on the streets. And we do all of the stuff you would expect a museum to do, normal museum stuff, exhibitions, events, and research. But we do also carry out actions in solidarity with the community. So we do campaigning, we carry out legal interventions, we have street solidarity that we take out to the streets. And in 2020, actually, we completely repurposed the museum into like an emergency aid operation for the year when the pandemic hit. And that shape-shifted a lot, and we did lots of different things, like setting up a 7-day-a-week hub, doing a street support service and solidarity in the winter lockdown. And why would a museum do all of this? Well, I think it's because we are a museum. We hold the National Collection for Homelessness, but we're also, I started to think of us as a survivor community. Everyone involved in Museum of Homelessness has survived stuff, and we take care of each other in that, and we are necessarily, as survivors, concerned with healing and justice. And it's becoming more and more important. And it's just about doing what is needed. So the museum, I hope, is more authentic because it's doing what the community asks it to do and needs it to do, rather than doing just museum stuff in the traditional way. And gobscure has been part of our Museum of Homelessness family since 2018, and they've helped us think about creative resistances. That's a really important part of the work, I think. And what I've learned is that creativity and artistic practice doesn't have to be a poem or a play or a painting. The arts is so much more than that as well. In 1971, a Taiwanese Chinese artist, Liu Anxia, bought a derelict farmhouse in rural Cumbria. And with like very little money and just his own sort of resources, he transformed that space into a museum, art gallery and community centre. And it was most importantly a community centre for that rural community. And was there for a number of years and also showed the work of famous artists, but most importantly, it was a site of connection for the community. And that was really, really inspiring story to me about his work. And because for me, the power of the arts, it resides in this. It's the act of making spaces. It's the act of world making and creating spaces for people. Acts of creative resistance, which in Gobscure's play Joey, which we were lucky enough to see a couple of years ago, and which Faye, our BSL interpreter today, starred in, there's a list of creative resistances, small but powerful acts that people can take at the back. So I would really recommend people look at that if they want inspiring, because these acts are powerful, whether we're making a community centre in Cumbria with our bare hands, whether we are transforming museum shelves into aid shelves during a pandemic, or whether we are pinning suffragette colours to racehorses, stealing clock hands out of schools, or dressing as Santa and telling the kids that all toys in store are free, which are resistances from Joey. Whether we're doing any of those small or big acts, it's healing, it's connected, it's authentic. And that's where I think creativity can be really powerful. I think we have to think about what we're healing from really quickly, because if we're going to do this work around healing, we have to have a proper understanding of what trauma is. And trauma is a real buzzword at the moment. A lot of people are talking about it. And sometimes for me as a trauma survivor, that stuff's difficult because it can be taken away from us. But I'm going to draw on the work of Gabor Mate, who I'm lucky enough to be training on one of his programs at the moment. He is a really amazing healer and thinker on trauma. And he talks about different kinds of trauma. But one of the kinds of trauma that I find very useful for the present moment is that he talks about this collective trauma. Because at this point, we're a few hundred years into capitalism, colonialism, so many nations and many people many societies are holding a lot of collective trauma. And what happens with that is that this collective trauma isn't dealt with in society, so it gets pushed onto groups. Certain groups in society become on the receiving end of this. And in the UK, I think it's true to say that people who are homeless receive this, disabled people receive this, people of colour receive this, LGBTIQ people, particularly at the moment, transgender people receive this trauma. And it's a very difficult time. It's a very hard time, I think, for many people to live through, because what this mechanism does in society is it tells us the problems with us. If we're in those groups, the problem isn't situated in society, it pathologizes us. And that can be a really hard thing to experience. And I won't talk too much about it because people will be at this event because they know it, they've experienced it at mental health services, with government agencies, with those systems that are meant to help, but they actually re-traumatize. So what can we do? Like, what can we do about that? Well, I don't have all the answers, but for me, like, my own healing as a trauma survivor has really begun when I became involved in Museum of Homelessness, and so many amazing people gathered around the idea of a Museum of Homelessness. And it was the first time that I could bring my full self into an art space. Like, that hadn't happened in previous places I'd worked. I couldn't be my authentic self, but now I can with people that I know understand. We don't even have to talk about it. It's almost on an energetic level. There's a real power in that. Like, not having to edit or hide parts of your experience or present only a certain part of yourself. That's really healing, because these traumatizing systems that I mentioned, they ask you to do that, to change, to hide bits of yourself, to improve yourself, or to retell a story again and again and again. And traumatizing systems, like Gobscure said, are always trying to fix people. And that happens in homelessness services all the time. Like, you have to improve just to get a housing placement, you have to improve in the system's eyes. And it's not healing, that's exhausting, right? But it happens in the arts as well. And I think the arts can be really instrumentalizing in this. So if your arts program is trying to improve people's well-being, really think about whether that's actually harming people. I would like to propose that the well-being agenda is part of the problem, because it's that thing that the problem resides in the individual, not in society. And like, it's very patronizing for institutions to think that they can improve people's well-being. In Museum of Homelessness, our well-being is most improved when we're fighting together for justice. And healing, therefore, is not possible in the current time, in my opinion, without justice work, movements to bring justice. The disability arts movement is really inspiring to me. Piss on pity, that slogan, which I think was from the 80s, like, that's the energy we need right now. Yes, piss on pity. And in the homelessness world as well, you know, there's been a great tradition of people who are homeless rising up and saying, I've had enough, like, no more, you know. And that just shows, doesn't it, that our communities, like, we know how to survive. Our creative resistances are already so powerful, and sharing and celebrating that's healing to me. So in Museum of Homelessness, we try and make these spaces where we can share that, we can celebrate who we are and what we've overcome and how we do it. And our most recent production, Secret Museum, which was an exhibition slash theatre piece slash direct action, shared that with audiences. It was like these beautiful creative legends coming together to share like how we've survived the pandemic, processing it, and sharing our collective organising approach. And that's connection and authenticity. And if trauma is disconnection and alienation, then that's the opposite. That's where the healing is. Just briefly, we have other ways of fighting for justice as well. We document and honour everyone who dies homeless in the UK, most far too early. We process that collective trauma together. We install memorials to remember people. We have those processes. We also take our fight for justice to outside the Home Office. We build our museum outside the Home Office sometimes. We take it to the streets. It also matters to fight for justice internally as well. So we have flat pay structure that the community has designed, because I think, you know, you can't just demand a better world, and we have to also make that reality for ourselves wherever we have the power to. So to summarize, I think it's sad to say, like, things are not going to get better anytime soon, and that is, it is really hard time we're living through. But with current policies at the moment, nothing, you know, there's not much hope on a policy level, but we can make these beautiful, creative, fighting spaces where we take care of each other. Like, we can learn from our elders to piss on pity. We can make new stuff as well. We can heal together. We can gain justice together. It is possible. So the arts is so much more than a poem or a play or a book or a painting. It's so much more, and it's ours. But I don't, you know, as I say, I don't have all the answers. All this stuff I've learned from the community that's gathered around Museum of Homelessness, and being in solidarity together is so healing, and there's so much justice to be gained. So that's like a stream of consciousness that I scribbled down earlier about where MOH is at the moment. It's so lovely to talk with you about it, and thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Jess. Some really powerful words there, and kind of really heart-touching. Yeah, we need to find better ways to connect and talk about all this stuff. And for everyone in the webinar, I would encourage you to, if you have questions for Jess or gobscure, or for Maria, who's coming up shortly, please put them in the Q&A chat. We're all going to come together at the end for a 50-minute Q&A session. We're going to take a very short break and show Gobscure's silent film, More Unlocksmiths Needed. Yeah, feel free to take a break or to watch the film. The film is available on Disability Arts Online. So, Joe, if you could cue the film, and look forward to seeing Gobscure.
It's just worth saying the film is silent. There is no sound in it. That film is available online, and the individual artworks also are, so do help yourself to that. Just want to introduce Maria, who I've known and worked with long-term, amazing performer, writer, thinker, doer. And we actually started off with a play called Cutter about many things. Part of it is rooted in Wales, in South Wales, and where they have the right to play. So this thing about reframing narratives, housing is a human right, let's keep talking about the rights that we do have and the rights we ought to have, including the right to play. I think that's a slight diversion, but just want to hand over to Maria, brilliant writer, performer, thinker and doer. Take it away, Maria.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for everyone in the room as well today. It's a real honour, and I feel very humbled to be here. So I am a mixed-raced woman with black hair and blonde highlights. My skin is brown and I have red lipstick on, and I have a yellow t-shirt that says "Be kind" on it. So when I was asked to have a talk about healing in the arts, this seed came from a research and development piece I did earlier on in the year with actually Gobscure. And the discussion was around the theatre director who immediately on Zoom said, if anyone's feeling the Zoom fatigue that we're all feeling at the moment, being in lockdown for the last year, take some time out, have a rest, have a break. And I thought, this is really interesting, that safe space created on camera, online. I wonder if that safe space will continue to be created in the theatre space, in a room, on a film set. And so that's where the discussion sort of started. And then I thought about, well, there are birth doulas that look after women through pregnancy and beyond. And then there are end-of-life doulas that help people in palliative care and long-term illness understand and be with them and talk to them throughout till the end. Where is the bit in the middle? Okay, so this particularly relates to the theatre space. So I had a look online to see what was available out there that looks after performers, as I am a performer, or writers, or the creative person in the arts. And there's a lot of resources online to support the individual. But it was interesting, like Jess had said earlier, a lot of the responsibility is on the individual. And there's a lot of words like well-being being thrown around in terms of looking after yourself, which is great. Lots of lovely resources. But how does that translate when you're actually in those spaces, when you're on the set, when you're in the theatre space? Who is looking after you? And what happens if there is a problem? Normally it would be, you start with your agent if you have one, or the casting director, or their journey ends very early on. You go to the director, and then you have a company of actors that you work with. On a film set, it may be the producer or executive producer. But what if there isn't anyone to go to? Who do you go to? And so I had a look into, look online, and actually a friend of mine who runs her own podcast called Say Your Mind, Kelechi Okorafor, she had an interview with Barry Jenkins, who directed Moonlight and recently Underground Railroad. And it was so interesting for me to hear a director speak about the subject matter being very visceral, being very traumatic, including race, and how the actors, whether they were black or white, would be affected by certain scenes that they would have to see and do on set. And so he employed Kim White, a mental health counsellor, to come on set throughout the entire production and actually start the films, particularly looking at whether people were triggered or how their behavior was, or if there were extreme certain scenes on set. She would halt the filming process and talk to people, or people would actually say, I think you should talk to this person. And she would go and do that. And even Barry Jenkins said that when he was directing a particular scene, she stopped, immediately got in there and took him to one side. And I just thought, wow, that is amazing. That doesn't happen. And I understand this particular film about this particular subject matter is harrowing. I mean, for me personally, I couldn't imagine what people went through in that particular time. And what their experiences are, but recreating scenes of where someone is being burnt alive or having a traumatized experience to escape an incredible, horrific situation, to look at that as though it was real and to experience it, and having, as an actor, having to get in touch with your emotions. How do you deal with that otherwise? So that for me was really interesting. And then I had a look at a couple of other theatres to see if there was anything going on. I had lots of conversations with friends, and I noticed on Tallowa Theatre Company's website that they put a posting on their Instagram page to say, our staff have been working through the pandemic and we're going to take 2 days off. And I thought, wow, Maybe this is the start of things to come in theatre. Maybe this is the precedents we need to see to set the way forward, that everybody from behind the scenes to in front of the scenes, we're now going to have some time off, take time for our mental health, take time and understand that we have worked incredibly hard during the pandemic, because some people have continuously worked without having a break. And it was interesting to hear Jess again talk about, you know, acts and action and movements for me. And again, I don't have any answers for the arts, but I think the starting point is definitely about having those conversations, thinking of ourselves as a community, regardless of whether we are employed to do different roles within the theatre or on a film set. Those roles interact with everybody, and everybody is there as a community to make that play or that theatre piece or that film happen. And where does it start? I used to believe it started with the director, who would be the person to initiate the conversation, look at the script. He or she, they are the captain of the ship. They guide everybody, they steer everyone, they look after everybody. But for me now, I think that actually it's everybody's responsibility to look after each other and make sure that we're all okay. I think language plays an important part in how we communicate, and looking at how we redefine certain words that we use, and going back to Jess's incredible conversation about trauma. Words do affect people so deeply, and groups are very much considered as marginalized at the moment. And how do we bring our community together? How do we bring those to find the words to make us to make us feel like we are not shaming anyone, but we are helping and supporting everyone in the room, ourselves as individuals and the people that we are working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Colin, for this, and thank you, Jess. I don't know if you would you like to appear back on screen, Jess? So there is an opportunity just now for the sort of folk out there. So in the audience, but Augusta Ball, who gifted the world Theatre of the Oppressed, and of course in the audience, you know, as well as Museum of Homelessness. I know that we have Dave Toe from Arts and Homelessness International, amazing organisation. There is also a theatre company out there called Cardboard Citizens, who use Augusta Ball's techniques, and he talked about spect actors. So this thing of collectivizing is wonderful what you said, Maria, and haunting, memorable, and what Jess you said too. It's not just about the individual, it is about the collective, the we, the us, the plural. And it is also about that idea of being a spect actor. So folks who are in the audience, if you do have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will talk about it. But also I do have, you know, and again, it's also an opportunity for Maria, Jess, Colin, if you wish to speak or respond. I know I have something that I would like to ask in response to this. But it is that thing of, you know, alongside, you know, reframing narratives, it's important, let's tell the good news stories, the real, the genuine ones. That's what that book by Rebecca Solnit is about. It's not naive, it is what are the good, the amazing, the incredible things. Let's celebrate those brilliant things that you do in a small way, in a colossal, huge way. One thought in response to Maria, I would love to see organisational doulas. I think that's a brilliant concept. This person that sits a bit outside, I think, for example, DAO and or, you know, that's Disability Arts Online and or Museum of Homelessness, maybe that's a way forward. There's a theatre company out there called Slung Low, who are based in Leeds. I think people are big fans of this. So they are just a theatre company, which means they also managed the local food bank under COVID. They currently manage a patch of woodland on behalf of the community. So they actually have a physical patch of woodland. I have been driven into it in one of their buggies. And Jess, I mean, you know, would a patch of woodland be useful as a concept, an idea, or, you know, a patch of land, a territory, a thing for you as a collective, or Maria, you know, what do you think of having a Slung Low inspired patch of woodland with a doula or something like that? What, you know, what, you know, let's dream. What are your dreams, or what, you know, what's your response to that?
I really like that idea. I think in the last year, I know certainly I have gone out to sort green spaces living in an urban town, just to feel the grass under my feet and be very grounded with the earth. There hasn't been, and it's amazing to see actually how many people in the community have gone out to walk in those green spaces as well. And that's where I felt my community were. You know, the people around me found solace by being with each other outside.
Just to respond, Maria, to what you've shared and your thoughtful and kind of loving approach to how theatre spaces and film spaces can and could be improved. I really love the idea of like working with doulas as well. I think it's really brilliant. Gobscure mentioned it to me earlier in the year as something that you were thinking about, and it's something that we're reflecting on as well. So thank you for that. And Slung Low, yeah, basically Museum of Homelessness would like to be Slung Low when we grow up. So they've got like the woodland, they've got a football team now. I just saw online this year. They've looked like they're just legends. So yeah, anything they do, I'm up for that. They're like absolutely amazing. It was great to visit them earlier in the year as well. A few of us went up for Gobscure's Provoked to Madness, and it was like our northern older cousins just doing amazing work up there.
I think at the same time as wanting to be, you know, to grow up and be some, this idea of the right to play, and as I said before, Wales, first country in the world to enshrine the right to play. I also think we should be asking what, you know, what do you want to be when you grow down? I think we need to play more.
Obscure. There's a question that's just come through in the chat.
These are the artworks that I have mentioned several times are available for free download online. So the link is already in the chat. Please help yourself to the 8 artworks in the film. They're all there, so you can see them in your own time and help yourself to them and share them.
They were asking about Provoked to Madness by the Brutality of Wealth. Paolo C. I concur with, I think the important thing is finding safe spaces to tell our stories as a way of looking after each other. I love the idea of having some woodland to kind of ruminate around a campfire, and I think part of that is also about connecting with our ancestors and finding healing in those roots that go back, and just connecting beyond, you know, the last 200, 400 years, whatever, of oppression that principally the, you know, the white races have kind of ruled and overshadowed human rights, and just to, you know, reclaim messages from the earth. That's something that I feel kind of really, that all of this conversation is bringing up in me, finding those spaces to make those connections, and finding the people to feel safe with, to share those stories as well.
Which is why one of those artworks which now is relief. It is a leaf, and it has the word relief as in R-E-L-I-E-F, and also R-E-L-E-A-F. And the first time I made that artwork was at Museum of Homelessness Catalyst project. I had actually gone outside to sit outside for some fresh air, and some leaves started falling. So I drew that, and then gave folks, I think it was post-it notes with that on it. I think you're right, we need relief and relief. And that was the Catalyst project, which this wonderful thing of being in a space where it's a collective and you don't have to explain or justify yourself. There aren't gatekeepers, there aren't lanyard wearers or lanyard spreaders who like to keep you out, or are you one of the good ones or not. It was a group of people, this thing of lived experience, whatever the lived experience is absolutely key. This thing of plural, group of people, different cultures, different backgrounds, different places, but that lived experience around which form of homelessness we've been through. There are multiple versions, of course, and we don't have to justify ourselves or explain. We all knew where we're coming from. So this thing of, I think, everything people have said, this healing and justice, in the two sides of it, the collective, this having space, mental space, which is about slowing down. You know, society forces us to speed up, to be faster, quicker. Come on, are you for us? Are you against us? Push back, push back, push back. Anti-social media. And we actually need to slow down. That thing of slow down and grow down. Wonder and wander, and, you know, be playful, be curious, look around. Take that space. There is, so Shinrin Yoku is forest bathing, and I am writing about this in a play for young people. And, you know, ultimately I want to take people into tree, you know, out and about. I also want to give people, you know, 80 youngsters, you know, 8-year-olds, loud speakers, you know, and, you know, get them singing Patti Smith, People Have the Power. I think 88-year-olds singing that in woodland is great, but we need to slow down. I think you're right, we need to reconnect. That thing about being collective, that thing, and again, Maria absolutely raised, and no Jess did, and so that thing of, if you like, power, the power pyramid, the, you know, a certain shape, isn't it? And there is a leader, there's someone at the top. Actually, that flat structure, that collective, that way of doing it, all these different things, these are ways that I think we better. So, and again, slow and low, flat pace structure as well. So let's slow down, let's be collective, let's look at these things. How can, for example, we persuade the Arts Council that perhaps DO need an organisational doula?
That sounds like a really good idea, and something that we'll explore. I think, you know, we're working with Gobscure on a MAD manual, which is a way of thinking about how we look after each other as a team within Disability Arts Online, better, and how we can then kind of put that out to the artists, the communities of disabled people that we work with. There's a question, gobscure, in from Trish saying, if she asks, if the well-being agenda is damaging, how can individuals be better supported, and what language should we use to talk about it?
So well, I have actually just spotted, and there's also I'm going to answer that, and if Maria and Jess also do, and then I can see that also Leslie Illingworth has a question as well. So Trish, my answer. So literally yesterday, and I was involved in the Northeast Mad Studies Collective, and yesterday I sent an image to one of the people involved in it. There are actually beer mats that have just come out that say "sod well-being." So someone, and not a proper artist, one of those trained artists, one of those ones that has studied, and just someone made a bunch of beer mats, "sod well-being." And again, it's no disrespect. If well-being works, great. It's individual and probably about having a lot of money. But yeah, that thing of if having a beer is your thing, or relaxing or whatever, I think we could talk more about the language of it. And I don't know if Maria or Jess, and I just want to respond to Leslie Illingworth, who has a blog, www.homelessnessinspeltthorn.wordpress.com. And this person says they had a flat with no garden, no pets. And although COVID has been horrendous, but they did find local nature reserves. They have an allotment, and they're a visual artist. So this thing of having that space, and what are the spaces that you want or you like, Jess or Maria, and also, what would your reply to well-being, or what would your beer mat message be, or your T-shirt slogan, as well as "be kind," or your placard, or your record sleeve? What thing would you, what message, what sort of, if like a punchy message, would you like to put out there?
I'm not good at sloganeering, but I think sometimes we thought of Museum of Homelessness as a space to be unwell. Like, it's okay to be unwell. Like gobscure, you say something about in your show Provoked to Madness about being diagnosed with opposition or defiance disorder, and who the fuck wouldn't be, right? So it's like that, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I mean, of course we're all going to be unwell right now. There's a lot of society's quite unwell. So I find the well-being agenda is, to me, the way I've seen it played out in the arts before is about, it's quite often tied to like employability and productivity and improving oneself. And I think it's really sinister when the arts is deployed as a mechanism for that stuff. Like, it's not about that. So I think we can just get rid of well-being as a word, and I don't know what we'd replace it with, but we don't do that in MOH anyway.
Thank you, and I agree. I think you saw me nodding there. I don't have a slogan either, but I think that there are so many models and systems in place that have been in place way too long, and the way that communities and society has changed. People have changed in the way that we do things, the way that we learn, the way that we stay curious in life, has really changed at least in the last 100 years, at least since the Industrial Revolution, at least and still since the burst of the internet. The way that we receive information and that we absorb it. There's so many things in our society that change, that the models and the systems that are in place don't seem to have changed with them. So I would want to start there, because in society, we're having to create these groups that the system does not help or assist or support with. These groups, these organizations are coming together and you know, are helping the community in different ways because they don't exist in the wider system, because they don't know how to handle it.
And it is based on competition for supposedly scarce resources. Britain is about the 7th largest island, you know, in terms of, you know, the money flowing through the island. We have, I think it's about £2.5 trillion in a traditional year flowing through us. What couldn't we do and achieve, whoever is on the island currently, whoever is here for whatever reason? And by the way, Wales also has a futures commissioner. So this is someone that sits outside the Senate, their parliament. Their job is to think of the future, not news cycles, parliamentary cycles, etc., but 25 years down the line, 50 years, 75 years, 100 years. So they have this long term, this wider horizon, if you like. And I think this thing about time, thinking on different time scales, Colin mentioned, is an important thing. That word well-being, maybe we just need to push it down a well. We just need to find a well and shove it. Zuleika, who was guest editor of Disability Arts Online very recently, brilliant articles, has suggested, is it whole being? Get rid of the word well-being and have whole being. You know, being whole. That's a lovely word, and you know, let's see an artwork on that, Zuleika. I know we're coming towards the end. I would like to quote one thing. So Andrew Vachss, Vachss, that's his surname, amazing writer. I stole one of his books a long time ago and could never steal anymore, so I had to steal other stuff to get the money to buy the books. Now, he did say, and I quote, "Anybody who has served in combat in any way understands that words are weapons, and I'm in a war, the war hasn't stopped." He also said, now, and so he actually was taking aid into Biafra in the 60s, and he said, yes, he survived that, you know, whereas the person next to him literally didn't. And he said that word, and this is no disrespect to anyone who uses that word, this is, you know, use whatever language you need. He said that he survived, but surviving is accidental. He said for him, the trick is to transcend. So it's not just surviving, getting through it. Which is totally cool, and this is not a criticism of surviving or survival, but he was saying that, if you like, for him the trick is to transcend, to, let's say, get above it or beyond it, not just through it, but achieve something despite or even because of it. So, and I say, I think we're almost at the end. I just want to say healing and justice, or I call it love and rage. So I'm just holding up a origami paper square with silver and cream and red flowers and a love and rage black and red heart on it. I'm going to silence myself now. I don't know if other folks have any last comments, thoughts, words, wisdom, or anything else, but thank you.
I just have one last thought. I think, and I said this when I saw the Secret Museum with Jess and the Museum of Homelessness, is that society loves a label, and we need to move away from those labels that are put on us.
Thank you. And I'm just on the note of surviving, I'm just going to paraphrase one of the community members who gave an object to the Secret Museum. And he says in his testimony, he says he lives outside and has done for a long time, but he says, I didn't survive the pandemic, I lived it. To survive something, you have to be struggling, and I wasn't struggling one bit. And I love that object story because it challenges people's perceptions of like the helper and the helped.
I think you're right, Jess, and it kind of goes back to what Gobscure was saying about the importance of language and thinking about the layers of meaning behind the words that we use to describe ourselves and to describe others. And I think my slogan would be fight for the trees. That would be my t-shirt slogan, because I think having just been reading Hidden World of Trees by Peter Wolleben. You know, we've got a heck of a lot to learn from trees, and the science that's coming through now about how they communicate and look after each other. Yeah, that would be my last thought before saying a big thank you to everyone, to Gobscure, to Maria Thomas and Jess Turtle, and of course to Faye and Elinid, and thank you to everyone out there in the webinar for joining us. And I just think that these kinds of conversations are actually really important, and I hope that this conversation sparks more conversations about how we, you know, how we kind of remove the labels and find better ways of looking after each other and supporting each other, and using the arts to tell better stories. Thank you, everyone. And
you can see a tree on my wall behind, and just to turn Colin into a t-shirt slogan that I made in the Brecon Beacons about 20 years ago: think tree, think free, branches worldwide. Night.